Frank Castle's backstory confuses me. Well, in the MCU anyway. Like, I know the basics, it's mostly the same in any media, but I was watching The Punisher One Last Kill recently and I realized maybe I don't know it very well. Or at least I don't remember it very well. Because they kept adding stuff to the point that it started to feel a little too complicated. So if you, like me, haven't watched this show in a while, or never even watched it to begin with, well, this is the video for you. And for me, honestly, I needed the refresher anyway. In case you don't know the Punisher at all, his backstory always starts the same way, with his entire family being shot down by mobsters. Some adaptations took that a little too literally, and went big on how his whole family was killed, but most, including the MCU, just tend to focus on his immediate family. That is his wife Maria, and their 2 children Lisa and Frank Jr. After witnessing their deaths, Frank swore revenge by killing everyone involved in their murder, which is how he becomes the Punisher. I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm just trying to give you the overall context. Because we're actually just focusing on how the MCU adapted it, all the way back in the original Daredevil Season 2, and how it developed in The Punisher Season 1. Because while this version followed the original fairly closely, there was a lot more to it. The deaths of the Castle family were actually a full-blown conspiracy, complete with cover-ups, twists, and betrayals. Here's what happened leading up to and during that tragedy, or at least how Frank experienced it. Frank Castle used to be a Marine, which meant he would be away from his family for months at a time. Whenever he came back home, he and his family had a tradition of going to Central Park, eating some food, and riding the carousel. That day was no different. He'd been having a nice day with his wife and kids, and his best friend and brother-in-arms, Billy Russo. Billy left at some point, so, the family could have a moment together on their own. This was their little homecoming tradition after all. Not long after, though, a shootout started. About 3 rival gangs had been on Central Park that day, and an argument escalated until it was a full-on gunfight, with the Castles caught right in the middle. Maria, Lisa, and Frank Jr. died right away. Frank got hit, but he managed to survive, and from there, he swore revenge, and went after each of the gangs involved, which eventually earned him the nickname The Punisher. Pretty standard stuff so far. The gangs, as Frank knew it at the time, were the Kitchen Irish, the Mexican Cartel, and the Dogs of Hell, all of which Frank went after and left most of its members dead. That attracted the attention of the police and Daredevil, which eventually got him arrested. Soon after, Nelson and Murdoch stepped in as his lawyers. And at first, Frank was actually willing to deal with the consequences of his actions, at least on the surface. He even agreed to plead guilty to the charges so they could land him a deal. After talking to Karen Page, though, he changed his mind. You see, the district attorney Samantha Reyes seemed to have some hidden motives for being so interested in this case. And that was actually the whole reason why Nelson and Murdoch took the case to begin with. They wanted to make sure Frank got a fair sentence instead of being used to cover up whatever the DA was trying to cover up. Anyway, Frank decided to plead not guilty. This way, the case had to go to trial, which could bring everything to light. The trial focused heavily on the Central Park massacre and Frank's state of mind before, during, and after it happened. They brought in a psychiatrist to talk about the impact it would have on him, Frank's former officer in command, Colonel Ray Schoonover, to praise his achievements as a Marine, and most importantly, Dr. Gregory Tepper, who reported on the family's murder. His report claimed that Maria, Lisa, and Frank Jr. had each been hit by 1 bullet, and it also failed to mention a certain John Doe found on the scene. The thing is, Tepper had been threatened by very powerful people into falsifying his reports. The family had been caught in the crossfire between 3 heavily armed gangs after all. It's a little unlikely they were each hit by 1 bullet. As for the John Doe, well, he was a police officer, an undercover cop that just happened to be there, but couldn't appear in any of the official records. Suspicious, to say the least. Now, Tepper's testimony could not be used as evidence due to unrelated reasons, but the point is, this proved that there was something fishy going on in relation to the shooting at Central Park. Someone was going through a lot of trouble to keep the details of those killings a secret. And that someone, like Nelson and Murdoch suspected, was District Attorney Samantha Reyes. But why? Well, remember when I said that there were at least 3 different gangs in Central Park that day? They weren't just there for fun. They were there for a meeting with a notorious heroin drug dealer known as the Blacksmith. Reyes had been trying to catch this blacksmith guy for a while now, so when she heard about this meeting, she organized a sting operation hoping to catch him. But she chose not to clear the park of any civilians. She was afraid that if Blacksmith got suspicious, he wouldn't show up and she would miss her chance. That didn't make a difference though, because Blacksmith did not show up anyway, and the rising tension between the gangs eventually triggered a shootout. After that, Reyes did all she could to sweep this mess under the rug so it wouldn't hurt her career, and that included covering up the truth about what happened to Frank Castle's family. That's still not the full story though, and the truth actually goes way deeper than that. District Attorney Reyes was just one piece of the puzzle, just a pawn for the people who were actually responsible. But to understand who they are and what really happened, we need to take a step back and look at Frank's days as a Marine, specifically his last few months before he returned home, back when he was stationed in Afghanistan and part of a group known as Operation Cerberus. This is when things start to get a little complicated, so bear with me. Operation Cerberus was created and led by William Rawlins, a CIA agent who wanted to advance his career by basically shortening the war by any means necessary. He put together a team of the best across all US military units, and that team became known as the Cerberus Squad. It included, among others, Gunnar Henderson, Billy Russo, and of course, Frank Castle, all under the command of then-Major Ray Schoonover. The whole point of Operation Cerberus was to eliminate high-value targets before they became threats. The thing is, though, they didn't really go about it the, legal way, and therefore it wasn't sanctioned or funded by the US government, at least not officially. Something Rawlins lied to the team about, by the way. So they had to find a way to finance this operation, but still keep it a secret. The way Rawlins and Schoonover chose to go about it was drugs. Heroin, to be exact. The idea was they would secretly smuggle it out of Afghanistan in the corpses of fallen soldiers into the US, where Schoonover would handle the distribution under his alias, Blacksmith. Yeah, that one. The one we were just talking about. We'll swing back to that though. Now, the disappearances of those high-value targets that the Cerberus Squad was after, as well as the suspected heroin trade, caught the attention of the Afghan National Police. They launched an investigation led by Ahmad Zubair with the help of Dina Madani, who was there on a Homeland Security assignment. In order to prevent the truth about their operation from getting out, Rawlins ordered the squad to kidnap Zubair, claiming that he was a terrorist. After interrogating him, Rawlins ordered Frank to shoot him and bury the body. Gunnar Henderson, though, had been showing concerns over what they had been doing and secretly filmed the whole interrogation. At this point, though, the Cerberus Squad had been gaining some infamy, and they were eventually ambushed, barely making it out alive. It had very clearly been an ambush from the start, by the way, but Rawlins sent them in anyway, something Frank almost killed him over. They did not like each other. Like, at all. With it now compromised, Operation Cerberus was shut down, the squad was disbanded, and Rawlins erased any trace of it from official records. He and Schoonover continued the drug trafficking, and everyone went home to live happily ever after. But how does that connect back to the Castle family? We're getting to that. So Gunnar decided to do something about that footage from the Zubair's interrogation. He sent it to the NSA, where it reached David Lieberman. No, that wrong character, that's Ben Grimm. Yeah, there you go. After struggling with the decision a bit, David decided the best thing to do would be to send the footage to Homeland Security, specifically Agent Dina Madani, who had started to look into Zubair's disappearance at this time. As you can imagine, that created some problems for Rawlins, who quickly made arrangements to have Lieberman killed. He survived though, and he lived off the grid for like a year, but that's a different story. Anyway, Rawlins still had to find the source of the leak, and wrongfully assumed it was Frank Castle. He didn't really like Frank, remember, from that fight I mentioned earlier, so he figured 2 birds, 1 stone, right? But the important thing is, he had a plan. He knew about the Castle family tradition of going to Central Park whenever Frank came home. And he knew how to make it happen without any ties to himself, Operation Cerberus, or any of the people involved. And how does he do it? Well, let's look back at the blacksmith, aka Schoonover, in the meeting in Central Park. The one with the Kitchen Irish, the Mexican Cartel, and the Dogs of Hell, and probably a few other groups that heard the rumors about the deal and wanted a piece of it, like Dutton's gang, whatever they're called, and the Ganucci's, who one last kill decided to throw in there for some reason. They were all supposed to meet the blacksmith that day, and DA Reyes and her sting operation were trying to catch the blacksmith that day. The thing is, the blacksmith was never going to be there. There was no deal. There was no meeting. There was never going to be a meeting. Schoonover and Rawlins didn't need a deal to happen. They needed a massacre. They needed so many dead bodies that nobody would bother looking too closely at any of them. They needed enough chaos that nobody would ask too many questions afterwards. And most importantly, they needed Frank Castle, his wife, and his children to be in that chaos, amongst all those dead bodies. So Schoonover set up the meeting and figured the existing beef between the three gangs would do the job for him once they realized he wasn't going to show. Of course, he was right. Maria, Lisa, and Frank Jr. were all killed that day. Not in an accident, not because they stumbled upon something that they shouldn't, like in the comics. They didn't die because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. This time, everything had been carefully planned out. They were in the right place, at the right time. Rollins and Schoonover were counting on it. In fact, they made sure of it. Because this time, the castles were the targets. Whoa, that was a bit of a heavy one, wasn't it? That's the Punisher for you. Just nothing but misery. I wonder though, how will he fit in a more PG-friendly world like Spider-Man? I'm excited to see it, but let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching, as always. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're into street level Marvel, and I'll see you next time, where we'll be discussing a certain group of ninjas that, just like the Punisher, will be in a certain movie releasing later this month. Until then, here's a video where we discuss Daredevil, what actually drives him, and some of the biggest misconceptions surrounding the character. I'll see you next time. Bye!